I've worked in the county records office for 9 years. 9 years is long enough to know which elevator sticks between floors, which fluorescent lights buzz when they're about to burn out, which printer jams whenever someone sends more than 30 pages to it, and which drawers in the basement should be opened carefully because the labels on them haven't been updated since before I started working there. It's also long enough to know that records don't lie. People do. People forget. People exaggerate. People change their stories. Records are supposed to be different. A birth certificate says when someone was born. A marriage certificate says when 2 people were legally married. A property record says who owned a building and when. A death certificate says when someone died. That last one was always the simplest. There is no ambiguity in death. You can argue about a person's birth date. You can argue about where they lived. You can argue about who they were married to. But once someone dies, there is eventually a piece of paper that says so. That's why the document I found on a Monday morning in October bothered me more than anything else I've ever encountered at work. Because it had my name on it. And it said I was going to die on Thursday. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 38 years old. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment about 15 minutes from the county building. I've never been married. I don't have children. My younger sister, Emily, lives about 40 minutes away with her husband. My parents are both dead. My father died when I was 17. My mother died 8 years later. I don't have a complicated family. At least, I didn't think I did. My job is complicated only if you don't understand how much paperwork goes into ordinary life. People assume a county records office is just a place where someone sits behind a glass window and prints birth certificates. That's part of it. But the building I work in contains decades of records. Some of them are digital. Some are scanned copies. Some are still physical. And some records are so old that the only reason we know they exist is because someone wrote their existence down in a ledger decades ago. My particular department handles archived civil records. Most days are incredibly boring. That's actually why I liked the job. Boring was reliable. You came in, you worked, you went home. Nothing unexpected happened. I had spent 9 years building my life around that kind of predictability. Then, on a Monday morning, I opened a drawer and found myself dead. It happened at 8:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just finished my first coffee. I was looking for a 2003 death certificate for a woman named Margaret Ellis. A funeral home had requested a certified copy. The request number was printed on a yellow slip of paper. I wrote the number down and went to the archive room. Archive room 3 is where older death records are stored. The room isn't particularly large, maybe 20 feet by 30. Metal shelves line 3 walls. There are 2 old computers against the far wall. A scanner sits on a desk in the corner. The overhead lights are bright enough to make everything look slightly sick. I found the drawer I needed. 2003. E through M. I pulled it open. The folders were arranged alphabetically. Ellis, Ellison, Emery. I reached toward the E section, and that's when another folder slipped forward. It landed against my hand. I almost pushed it back without looking. Then I saw the name. Mercer. Daniel. I froze. It wasn't unusual to see my own surname, but I hadn't expected to see my first name. I pulled the folder out. There was no reason to open it. I knew that. The request I was handling had nothing to do with me. But curiosity is one of those things that becomes dangerous only after you've already acted on it. I opened the folder. The first page was a death certificate. I read the name, Daniel Mercer. Then the date of birth, March 17th, 1988. My date of birth. I checked the address. My current address. I checked the mother's name. Correct. Father's name. Correct. I looked at the occupation. County Records Department. That was correct too. I actually smiled. It was so absurd that my first reaction was amusement. I assumed it was a clerical error. Maybe the folder belonged to someone else and had been filed incorrectly. Maybe someone had entered the wrong information. Maybe another Daniel Mercer existed. I wasn't worried. Not yet. Then I looked at the date of death. Thursday. 3 days from then. I stared at it. I looked at my watch. 8:51. I looked at the date printed on the certificate. October 17th. The current date was October 14th. For a few seconds, I couldn't make the numbers mean anything. Then I laughed. It was an awkward, involuntary laugh. The kind you make when someone tells you a joke you don't understand. I said out loud, "Okay." Nobody answered. I looked at the document again. The date was still there. Thursday. I checked the certificate number. I checked the county seal. I checked the registration number. Everything looked legitimate. Then I noticed the modification stamp. The certificate had been updated that morning. At 2:13 a.m., I should explain something about records. Documents don't simply appear in our system. Every modification creates a digital history. If a clerk changes an address, the system records the change. If someone corrects a spelling mistake, the system records the correction. If a document is uploaded, the system records the user ID and terminal. That's one of the reasons I trusted my job. There was a history behind everything. So I went to the computer. I entered the certificate number. The record appeared. I checked the modification history. 3 entries. The first, 2:13:07 a.m. The second, 2:13:41. The third, 2:14:02. All from Archive Room 3. All under the same employee ID, mine. I stared at the screen. Then I looked at the clock. 8:54 a.m. I hadn't been at work at 2:13. I had been asleep. I was certain. I checked the terminal ID, Archive-03-02. I knew that computer. It was the oldest terminal in the room. It wasn't connected to the public network. Only employees with archive permissions could access it. I looked at the camera above the doorway. Then I looked back at the screen. My first thought wasn't supernatural. It was identity theft. Someone had somehow gotten my credentials. That was disturbing enough. I wrote down the certificate number. Then I closed the file. I told myself I would report it. I didn't. Not immediately. Instead, I did something stupid. I checked the security footage. The security system kept 30 days of recordings. I selected Archive Room 3, October 14th, 2 a.m. The hallway was empty. 2:05, empty. 2:10, empty. At 2:12, a person appeared at the end of the corridor. They walked toward the archive room. I leaned closer. The footage wasn't high definition. The person was wearing a dark jacket. Their head was slightly lowered. They stopped outside the door. The door opened. They entered. I looked at the timestamp. 2:13. The person sat at the terminal. They appeared to type. Then they stood. They turned toward the camera. The footage froze for a fraction of a second. I didn't see the face. The person walked away. I rewound it, watched it again. Nothing. I watched it a third time. Then I noticed the walk. The person's left shoulder dipped slightly when they stepped. My left shoulder does the same thing. I developed the habit after a car accident when I was 19. It's subtle. Most people don't notice it. But I do. I know exactly what my walk looks like. And the person on the footage walked the same way. I stopped the video. I told myself that was meaningless. Lots of people have uneven walks. I closed the security program. Then I checked the employee database. My employee ID had been assigned to me 9 years earlier. There was no previous employee, no recycled number, no duplicate. Nothing. I searched historical login records. There were 19 entries under my ID before I had joined the county. Every one of them occurred between 2009 and 2011. Every one occurred around 2:13 a.m. Everyone came from Archive Room 3. I stared at the dates. 2009, 2010, 2011. I was 21 years old in 2009. I wasn't a county employee. I wasn't even living in this city. At least I didn't think I was. That thought stayed with me all day. I didn't tell my supervisor. Her name is Linda Harris. Linda had worked for the county for 25 years. She knew more about the building than anyone. She knew which basement shelves were unstable. She knew which records had never been digitized. She knew the history of the department. If there was an explanation, Linda would know it. At 4:30 that afternoon, I went into her office. She was reviewing a stack of property documents. "Can I ask you something?" She looked up. "Sure. Has the employee ID system ever recycled numbers?" She frowned. "Not since I've been here." "What about before that?" "I don't know. Could an old employee have had my number?" She put down the paper. "Why?" I almost told her. Instead, I said, "I found some old access records that don't make sense." "What records?" "Archive Room 3. She was quiet. Then she asked, "How old?" 2009. Her expression changed, only slightly, but I noticed. "What did you find?" I said, "Someone was using my employee ID." She stared at me. "Who?" "I don't know." "Are you sure it's your ID?" "Yes." "Could it be a data migration error?" "That's what I thought." She nodded. "Then let IT handle it." I almost left. Then I remembered the death certificate. I turned around. "Linda." "Yes." "Have you ever seen a death certificate with a future date?" Her face went completely still. Not confused, not surprised. Still. She said, "No." I watched her. Then she asked, "Whose?" I didn't answer. She asked again, "Whose certificate?" I said, "Mine." Linda didn't move. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she stood up. She closed the office door and locked it. "Show me." I took out my phone. I had photographed the certificate. She looked at the picture. Her face changed. I had expected confusion. Instead, she looked tired. Very tired. "Where did you find this?" "Archive Room 3. "When?" "This morning. Who else knows?" "Nobody." She stared at the photograph. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You're not supposed to be in that file." I felt my stomach tighten. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. "Linda." She looked at me. "Go home." "Why?" "Because you shouldn't be here." "Why?" "Daniel, please. What's in that archive?" She shook her head. "Nothing you need to know." I pointed at my phone. "My death certificate is in there." "I know." That was the moment everything changed. I said, "You knew." Linda looked away. "I've seen the name." "My name?" "Yes." "When?" She didn't answer. "How many times?" Still nothing. I asked, "How many Daniel Mercers are in that archive?" She finally looked at me. "That's not the right question." "What is the right question?" She said, "Which Daniel Mercer are you?" I left her office. I didn't go home. I went back to Archive Room 3. I don't know why. Maybe I was angry. Maybe I was scared. Maybe I simply needed something I could understand. I opened the old paper logs. Before the digital system, every access to restricted rooms had been recorded manually. I found the 2009 ledger. November 14th, 2:13 a.m. The entry read, Daniel Mercer, authorized. I turned the page. January 2010, Daniel Mercer. March, Daniel Mercer. July, Daniel Mercer. October, Daniel Mercer. Again and again, always the same name, always around the same time. Then I noticed the handwriting. The first entries were written in blue ink. Later entries were written in black. I recognized the black handwriting. It looked like mine. I compared it to my own notes. The formation of the letters was almost identical. The same narrow capital D. The same short cross on the T. The same way the number 2 curved. I felt sick. I took a picture. Then I found something worse. A note written in the margin. 3 words. Do not replace. I read it twice. Then I turned the page. There was another note. He remembers too much. I didn't tell Linda about the notes. I went home. That night, I called my sister. Emily is 4 years younger than me. When we were kids, she was the person who knew me better than anyone. I asked her if she remembered me ever talking about the county records office before I started working there. She laughed. No. Think about it. Why? Just think. There was a pause. Then she said, I remember you talking about a basement. I sat down. What basement? I don't know. When? When we were kids. What did I say? You said you got lost. Where? I don't remember. Emily. I was 6. You said I got lost? Yes. In the records building. She laughed. Why would we have been there? I didn't answer. She asked, what's going on? I told her I was doing research for work. Another lie. She said, Daniel, you sound weird. I know. Are you okay? I'm fine. I wasn't. Before we hung up, I asked, do you still have my original birth certificate? She said yes. I asked her to photograph it. She did. The picture arrived 10 minutes later. I opened it. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed the handwritten correction near the bottom of the document. Small initials. DM. I stared at them. They looked like my handwriting. I called Emily. Who signed the correction? What correction? The handwriting. I don't know. Can you check? Daniel, what's wrong? Please. She said she'd ask Mom's sister. I hung up. Then I searched my own handwriting. I opened an old notebook. I compared the letters. It was the same. Exactly the same. But the certificate was from 1988. I was a newborn. I couldn't have signed it. The next morning, I arrived at work early. I wanted to access the original paper birth record. Not the digital copy. The physical one. It took me 20 minutes to locate it. I opened the envelope. The birth certificate was there, but there was another page behind it. A correction form. It had been filed 6 months after my birth. The correction concerned my father's name. The original father field had been crossed out. The replacement name was my father's name. But the original name underneath was different. I couldn't read the handwriting clearly. I scanned it. Then I enlarged it. The original name was Daniel Mercer, my own name. My father's name had originally been recorded as Daniel Mercer, then corrected. I sat down. I read it again. Daniel Mercer. Father. Daniel Mercer. Child. That couldn't be right. I checked the hospital record. Same correction. I checked the county index. Same. Then I found an older record, a birth announcement. My mother had given birth to a boy. The father's name was listed as Daniel Mercer. I knew my father's name. It wasn't Daniel. It was Thomas. Thomas Mercer. So why had Daniel been listed as my father? I kept searching. Then I found something dated 12 years before my birth, a death certificate. Daniel Mercer. Male. Age 38. Date of death, October 17th, 1976. I stared at the document. The name was mine. The date was tomorrow. Not the same year. The same day. October 17th. I checked my calendar. Tomorrow. I went to Linda. She wasn't at her desk. I called her. No answer. I checked her office. Locked. I asked another employee if she had come in. He said she called in sick. That was strange. Linda had never called in sick during the 9 years I'd known her. I returned to my desk. There was an envelope waiting. My name was written on it. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a photograph. A county building. The photograph looked old. At the bottom was a date. October 17th, 1976. I looked at the building. It was the same building, but the front entrance looked different. A man stood outside. He was holding a folder. I recognized the face. It was me. Not similar. Me. Same eyes, same nose, same scar above my eyebrow, same left shoulder. I turned the photograph over. There was a handwritten message. You are not the first. I spent the next hour searching historical records. I found another Daniel Mercer, 1976. Another, 1988, another, 2000, another, 2012. The pattern wasn't exact, but every 12 years or so, there was a record under the same name. Sometimes it was a birth, sometimes an employment record, sometimes a death, sometimes a property transfer. Always the same county, always the same name. Daniel Mercer. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. A photograph from 2000. A county employee standing in Archive Room 3. The employee was me. I was 29 in the photograph. The face was mine. The scar was mine. But I had never worked for the county at 29. According to my employment record, I started at 29. The photograph was dated 6 months before my official hiring date. I opened my personnel file. The start date had changed. It now said October 17th, 2000. I refreshed the page. The date changed again. October 17th, 2009. I refreshed it. October 17th, 2017. Then, October 17th, 2026. My current year. I closed the file. My hands were shaking. At 2:13 p.m., the office lights went out. Not the whole building, only our department. Every computer shut down. Then the printer started. One page, then another, then another. Nobody moved. The printer finally stopped. I walked over. 3 pages. The first was my employment record. The second was my birth certificate. The third was my death certificate. All 3 had the same timestamp. 2:13. The death certificate had a new status. Certified. Underneath, identity transfer pending. I didn't understand the phrase. Then someone spoke behind me. You're not supposed to see that. I turned. Linda was standing in the doorway. She looked exhausted. What does identity transfer mean? She closed the door. Daniel, listen to me. What is happening? Your record is being closed. Why? Because it has reached the end of its cycle. What cycle? She looked at the documents. 12 years. What happens after 12 years? Someone else takes the record. I stared at her. Someone else? Another Daniel. Where? She didn't answer. Where is he? She looked toward Archive Room 3. He's already here. The person came out at 2:13. I saw him through the glass. He was wearing the county jacket. He walked toward us, left shoulder slightly lower. Same gait, same height, same face. He stopped 10 feet away. He looked at me, then at Linda. Has the transfer started? Linda said nothing. He looked back at me. "You're Daniel." I couldn't speak. He smiled. "So am I." I asked. "Who are you?" He answered, "You're going to find out." Then he walked past me. He entered Archive Room 3. The door closed. I followed. The room was empty. No one. Just shelves, a computer, a chair, and the old filing cabinet. The bottom drawer was open. Inside was a single folder. My name. I opened it. There were documents inside. A birth certificate, a death certificate, an employment record, and a photograph. The photograph showed me sitting at the terminal, signing my own death certificate. I looked at the timestamp. October 17th, 2026. Tomorrow. I looked at the signature. It was mine. I knew that signature. I had written it thousands of times. But underneath it was another signature. A second Daniel Mercer. Same handwriting. Same name. Same signature. One above the other. I realized then what the system was doing. It wasn't predicting my death. It wasn't recording a future event. It was preparing the paperwork for a replacement. The certificate wasn't saying, "Daniel Mercer will die." It was saying, "This version of Daniel Mercer will be closed, and another version would continue." I asked Linda how many times it had happened. She said, "I don't know." How many? At least 6. 6 Daniels? Maybe more. Where are they? She looked at me. Some died. And the others? She didn't answer. Linda. They kept living. Where? She shook her head. Different lives. With the same identity. Yes. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was too absurd. You expect me to believe that? I didn't believe it either. Then why are you still here? She looked at me. Because someone has to maintain the record. I asked, "Who started this?" She said, "We don't know." Then why does the county do it? Because the county has always done it. That answer scared me more than anything else. Not because it explained something, because it didn't. That evening, I went home. I packed a bag. I decided to leave town. I didn't know where. I didn't care. I just wanted to get away from the county building. At 11:40 p.m., I sat on my bed. My apartment was silent. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Nobody spoke. I heard breathing. Then a voice. My voice. It said, "Don't leave." I hung up. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. A message appeared. "If you leave, the record follows you." I deleted it. Another appeared. "It always follows you." I turned off my phone. At 2:13 a.m., there was a knock at my door. 3 knocks. Slow. I didn't move. Another 3. Then silence. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I waited. Then I noticed something on the floor. A white envelope. I opened the door. The envelope was addressed to me. Inside was my driver's license. The real one. Except the photograph was different. It showed me at 21. I had never had a driver's license with that photograph. I turned it over. The issue date, October 17th, 2009. Expiration, October 17th, 2021. I looked at my current wallet. My actual driver's license was still inside. 2 licenses. Same name, same number. Different photographs, different lives. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., I called Emily. She answered immediately. "Daniel? Are you okay?" "Yes. Did you find anything else?" There was silence. Then, Mom had a journal. "What?" "I found it last night." "What does it say?" "I don't know if I should tell you." "Please." She started crying. "Mom wrote about you." "About me?" "Before you were born." I closed my eyes. "What did she write?" She said you were already here. My throat tightened. What does that mean? I don't know. Read it. She hesitated. Then she read, October 17th, 1976. I couldn't breathe. She continued. Daniel came home today. Who? That's what Mom wrote. Emily said, Daniel came home today. He was 38. He said he had to leave again. I asked, what else? She turned pages. She wrote that he told her not to name the baby Daniel. I felt cold. Why? Because there was already a Daniel. I sat on the floor. Emily continued. Then she wrote something else. What? She said. She wrote that the county had made a mistake. What mistake? I don't know. Keep reading. There was a long silence. Then Emily whispered. She wrote, they keep sending him back. I went back to the county building. It was 8:01 a.m. The doors were unlocked. Nobody was at reception. The entire building was silent. I walked straight to the basement. Archive room 3. The door was open. Inside was the old filing cabinet. The bottom drawer was empty, except for one piece of paper. I picked it up. It was a simple form. No seal. No department name. At the top, identity transfer notice below. Current instance. Daniel Mercer. Status. Deceased. Then, next instance. Daniel Mercer. Status. Active. I looked at the effective date. October 17th, 2026. Today. At the bottom was a signature. Daniel Mercer. I recognized it. Then I noticed something else. There was a second signature line. Witness. The name was Linda Harris. I called her. No answer. I ran upstairs. Her office was empty. On her desk was a note. 4 words. I am sorry, Daniel. I found her later that afternoon in the parking garage. She was sitting in her car. I got into the passenger seat. She didn't look at me. You signed it. She nodded. Why? Because someone had to. Who is the next Daniel? She looked at me. You. I didn't understand. What? You're the next one. No, you already are. She explained that the records weren't creating people. They were maintaining an identity. Every time something went wrong, the county record system created a new continuity. A new set of documents. A new legal history. A new version of the same person. The person didn't necessarily know. Sometimes the transition happened naturally. Sometimes through death. Sometimes through memory loss. Sometimes through what Linda called administrative correction. I asked her what happened to the old version. She said, the records stopped recognizing him. And the person? She looked at me. Eventually, he stops recognizing himself. That night I went home. I didn't pack. I didn't call anyone. I sat at my desk. I opened a notebook. I wrote down everything I remembered. My childhood, my father, my mother, Emily, school, my first job, the accident, the apartment, the county office. 9 years. I wrote until my hand hurt. Then I stopped. I read the first page. Something was wrong. I didn't remember writing one of the sentences. It said, I have worked at the county records office for 21 years. I crossed it out. I wrote, 9 years. Then I continued. 5 minutes later, I looked down. The sentence had changed. 12 years, I crossed it out. I wrote, 9. The pen slipped from my hand. I stared at the page. The number changed again. 16. Then, 21. I closed the notebook. I didn't open it again. At 2:13 a.m., my apartment door unlocked. I hadn't touched it. The handle turned. The door opened. Nobody walked in. I stayed frozen. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, uneven, a left shoulder dipping. Someone walked past my apartment. I ran to the door. The hallway was empty. At the far end was the elevator. The doors were closing. A man stood inside. He looked at me. It was me. Older, maybe 50. He raised one hand. Then the elevator doors closed. I ran down the stairs. When I reached the lobby, there was nobody there, only an envelope on the floor. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Me, standing outside the county building. The date? 2038. On the back, you'll understand eventually. The next morning I returned to work. I don't know why. Maybe because I finally understood something. The records office wasn't trying to kill me. It was trying to keep me consistent. That was worse, because killing me would have ended something. The county didn't want an ending. It wanted continuity. It wanted the name Daniel Mercer to remain active. It didn't matter who was carrying it. It didn't matter whether the person remembered. It didn't matter whether the person believed the records. The records were the authority. And I had spent 9 years believing that records reflected reality. Maybe it was the other way around. Maybe reality had been following the records. At 2:13 p.m., Linda called me. She told me to come downstairs. I went to archive room 3. She was standing beside the old filing cabinet. The drawer was open. Inside was one final folder. My name. She handed it to me. I opened it. There were no documents, only a photograph. The photograph showed the county records office. The date was 1976. A young man stood outside. He looked exactly like me. But this time, I noticed something different. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman. My mother. She was younger. Much younger. And she was pregnant. I turned the photograph over. There was a note. He told her the child would be born in 12 years. I stared at the words. Then I understood. My mother hadn't given birth to me in 1988. Not exactly. She had been told I would be born. The identity had existed first. The person came afterward. Linda took the photograph from me. That's the oldest one we've found. Who was he? Daniel. Which Daniel? She looked at me. That's the point. I asked. Who is the original? She shook her head. We don't know. Someone has to be. Maybe. Maybe. She pointed toward the archive. That's what the records have been trying to determine for 50 years. I stared at her. What happens tomorrow? She said. Tomorrow is October 17th. I know. The transfer will complete. And me? She looked at me. You'll continue. How? I don't know. Will I remember? She didn't answer. I asked again. Will I remember? She finally said. Probably not all of it. I left the building. I drove home. I sat in my apartment for hours. At midnight, I opened the notebook. Most of the pages were blank. I couldn't remember writing them. But one page had a sentence. If you're reading this, you're the next one. Underneath, don't trust the records. Then, don't trust Linda. Then, don't trust Emily. I stared at the last line. I hadn't written it. At least, I didn't think I had. I turned the page. There was another sentence. Most importantly, don't trust yourself. I closed the notebook. At 2:13 a.m., my computer turned on. The county database opened. My death certificate appeared. The date, October 17th. Today. Status, certified. Then a new window appeared. New record created. Name, Daniel Mercer. Date of birth, October 17th, 2026. Father, Daniel Mercer. Mother, Emily Mercer. I stopped breathing. My sister's name was listed as the mother. I stared at the screen. Then another window appeared. Prior record closed. My name. My current birth date. My current address. My current employee number. Everything. Then the system asked, transfer memory. 2 options. Yes. No. I didn't touch the keyboard. The cursor moved. It selected no. I watched the button. Then I heard a knock at my apartment door. 3 knocks. Slow. I walked toward it. The hallway light came through the peephole. I looked. Someone was standing outside. A man. Same face, same height, same scar. But he looked younger, maybe 21. He was holding a folder. He raised it toward the peephole. I could see the label. Daniel Mercer. He smiled. Then he spoke. I could hear him through the door. You're late. I stepped backward. He continued. They've been waiting for you. I didn't answer. He knocked again. 3 times. Then he said, it's okay. His voice sounded exactly like mine. You won't remember. The hallway went silent. I stood there for a long time. Then I looked back at the computer. The screen had changed. The final message read, current instance, closed. Then, next instance, active. The screen went black. I waited for something to happen. Nothing did. No pain. No darkness. No sudden death. Just silence. I walked to the bathroom. I turned on the light. I looked into the mirror. I was still there. Same face, same scar, same eyes. I touched the glass. My reflection did the same. Then I noticed something. A tiny movement. My reflection smiled. I didn't. I stepped backward. The reflection remained still. Then it raised its hand. Not when I did. Before. It pointed toward the bathroom door. I turned. Nobody was there. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was normal. I stood there for several minutes. Then I went back to the bedroom. The folder from the county was sitting on my desk. I hadn't brought it home. I opened it. Inside was my death certificate. The date was today's date. The signature was mine, but beneath it was another signature. The same name, the same handwriting, and underneath both signatures was one final line. Record continuity confirmed. I stared at it. Then I realized something. I had been trying to figure out who was updating my death certificate. That was the wrong question. The person updating it wasn't trying to predict my death. They weren't trying to kill me. They were trying to make sure the county never had to admit that I had stopped existing, because the name Daniel Mercer couldn't disappear. The record couldn't become empty. Someone had to continue it. Someone had to remember. Someone had to wake up tomorrow believing they had always been me. And as I write this, I can hear the county building's old clock tower outside my apartment. It's 2:12 a.m., 1 minute before the record's update. I don't know how I know that. I don't have a clock in this room. I don't have my phone. I don't even remember where I put it. But I know. 2:13 is coming, and there's something else I need to tell you. I found this document beside my computer a few minutes ago. It's not a death certificate. It's an employment record. County Records Department. Employee, Daniel Mercer. Start date, October 17th, 2026. That date is today. But the strange thing isn't the start date. It's the experience listed underneath. Years of service, 9. I stared at it for a long time. Because I've worked at the county records office for 9 years. I know that. I remember my first day. I remember my desk. I remember Linda training me. I remember the first death certificate I processed. I remember 9 years. But the document says I started today. And somewhere deep in my mind, underneath everything I remember, another memory is beginning to surface. A memory of another first day. Another desk. Another Linda. Another version of this building. Another me. And suddenly, I understand why the records never change. They don't need to. Because every time I discover the truth, the system doesn't erase me. It simply gives the truth to the next version. The one who won't remember finding it. The one who will wake up tomorrow and believe this is his first day. The one who will eventually find a death certificate. His own. And he'll think it's a mistake. Just like I did. He'll investigate. Just like I did. He'll find the photographs, the ledgers, the old signatures. He'll ask Linda. He'll ask Emily. He'll come down to Archive Room 3, and he'll find this story. Because that's what the record wants. Not my death. Not my survival. Continuity. The clock outside just struck 2:13. The computer screen has turned on again. There's one new document. I haven't opened it. I don't think I will. Because I can already see the name at the top. Daniel Mercer. And beneath it, in the field marked date of birth, there's a date I don't recognize. Tomorrow. The field marked father says, Daniel Mercer. The field marked mother says, Emily Mercer. And at the bottom, under previous identity, there is only one word. Me. I think I understand now. The county never needed to create another Daniel Mercer. It only needed to convince each Daniel Mercer that he was the original. And if you're reading this after I upload it, then I probably made one final mistake. I probably believed this was my story. It isn't. It's the record. And records don't lie. People do. I just don't know which one I am anymore.